So I've opened up 3ds Max, and don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly like this, but there's nothing special really that we need to install. We're just going to be using 3ds Max to create our models. I'm going to first just pull that timeline off, or time slider, and close that just to give us a bit more real estate. And you'll probably see that most of the time I'll have the command panel on 2 columns just to give us more room and see what's going on, see all the options when we're using that. And I also mainly use just one viewport, so you can maximize the viewport by clicking here, or you can press Alt W and it's going to make it one view. So whenever we're working in 3D, it's really important that we work in real world scale. And if you want your lighting and your materials to look realistic, then we have to use real world scale. This is also useful if we're passing a model on to another team member, and everyone's using real world scale, so there's no issues in rescaling objects. To demonstrate how to set up these reference images in 3ds Max, I'm gonna use this sofa by Bow Concept, and I'm just going to share. I'd normally work on 2 screens, but obviously I want to record everything I'm doing, so let's just put it like that for now. And the first thing to check is our unit setup. So under customize, you can go to unit setup, and you just really want to make sure it's not on generic units. We're going to use centimeters here. If you're in the States, maybe you'll be using feet, but we're going to use centimeters, and just check in the system unit setup as well that you've got centimeters set up. And then we're kind of good to go. So if we scroll down and go to the product details, we can see that the height of this sofa is 88.5 centimeters. So if I go to create box, I'm just going to click and drag to create this, and we can see our dimensions here. So in height, I'm just going to type in 8.5 centimeters, and this is how high our sofa is in the real world, and therefore as well in our viewport. So we can plug in these details. So we've got width of 3 meters, 17 centimeters, and the depth is 156 centimeters. So what we see in here is the overall size of our sofa, including the L, this bit that sticks out, so it would kind of come in here. And we can see we've got these other dimensions, and I'm actually going to create some reference boxes so we get the seating height. So let's just click and drag to create another box, and let's make that height 41.5. And I'll create another box and make that one 61.5. And that's going to be the armrest height. And then the legs, let's create another box. And this one's only going to be 3.5 centimeters high. And that's our different heights. So if we take a look back at this reference, the overall height, which was 88.5, I believe, I think that includes these cushions here. So this is actually the height of these armrests. So we're going to model that first, and these cushions we'll tackle in a later lesson. So let's go back to our main box, and if I press F4, it's going to turn on our wireframe. And I'm just going to add an edit poly on top of this. So the edit poly modifier provides sub object modeling tools, and what that means is we can select edges, we can select vertices, and we can manipulate them and change the shape. And there's also quite a lot of tools in here that we can use to edit our meshes. So you can select modifiers from this drop down list. So you could select edit poly from here, and you'll see that I've got buttons set up here. And to set these buttons up, you can configure modifier sets here, and go to configure modifier sets. And you'll see that I've got total buttons of 2. You can have more. And what you do is just drag and drop the ones you use most often onto these buttons. So if I hit OK, you'll see that I've got 4 now. But for now, I'm just going to keep these 2 here. We probably won't even be using the UVW map in this course, but I've got edit poly on there. So that's a quick way of adding an edit poly. And up here, we've got some snaps tools, and these are going to come in handy. So what we're going to do is select our bottom poly. And you'll see that I can move that up and down. Now we want to create the bottom of our sofa, which is going to be 3.5 centimeters off the ground. So ideally, rather than just eyeballing this, we want to snap it to the top of this box over here. And to do that, I'm going to turn on snaps toggle, and you'll see that that lets us snap to other objects. And I've just right clicked on it, and just make sure you've got vertex on, and what that means is it's going to snap to other vertex, and you can see that crosshair snapping onto vertexes on boxes. And just make sure you've got snaps to frozen on. You can enable axis constraints and display rubber band as well. And now we can quickly snap to these heights. So that's the bottom of our sofa. So if I go to the front view by pressing F, we can see this darker line, and that's our ground, and we can see that that's how high our legs are. And then next up, let's select vertex and just drag and select all these top faces, and let's pull them down to the top of the armrest. And finally, I'm going to use edge, and I'm going to select this edge. Now you're going to find yourself going into orthographic. Just hit P on the keyboard and you'll get a nicer viewport. You can press F3 to go into wireframe, and you can click and drag to select these 4 edges, or you can just select one and use ring, and it's going to select all the adjacent edges. And now we're going to use our first tool in the edit poly, and that's connect. And you'll see that all of them edges that we had selected have now been connected by another set of edges. And I'm going to use, we've still got snaps on, and I'm just going to pull that to the top of our sofa seat. So what we've got here is we've got room for our legs underneath our sofa. This is how high the sofas are to here, and then this is the top of the armrest. So this is a really roughed out block of our sofa. A couple of things to note are, if you're in a sub selection and you try and select another object, you won't be able to do it. You need to turn off that selection to grab another object. And you can quickly toggle between all of these by using 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 on the keyboard. So that's 2, 3, 4 and 5, and number 1 is vert. So this doesn't look like too much, but it is actually a great reference to start modeling from. So now we can bring in some planes to use as blueprints for our reference.